振り返りをしていて、評価の方向について結構このグループでは盛り上がったんですけど、チームで目標を立てた時の、どうやってチームを評価するかとか、個人間で給与の差をつけるべきかとか、つけないべきだったりとか、つけるんだったらどうやってその基準を設けるべきかみたいなところとか、そういったところの具体的なアドバイスとか、何かご経験から共有できるものがあればお願いしたいなと思います。
Okay, maybe I should tell a story first. I did a training in Chicago. During the training, I explained about self-management, and I explained also about how people are assessed, etc. And so the remark was in Chicago, Victor, this sounds like a communism. And then I did the same training in Shanghai, and with this exactly same explanation. And they told me, this sounds like a Western blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So just want to clear out, it's not about everybody getting same salary or anything like that. Absolutely not. So the key thing about is that we don't really have what we typically call performance review, and assessing basically whether somebody is working hard or delivering a lot. We try to avoid doing that. And the main reason for that is there are two main reasons. One is that it's really hard to measure. And second one, it leads to essentially contradicting the collaboration between individuals, but also between teams. So no, I would not measure performance of a team or individual, or even a group of teams. What I suggest to do, because you still need to decide actually who gets more salary or less. So we suggest, and that works in reality really well, to measure capability and behavior. And therefore what we see when somebody has a really good capability, and there could be still in a behavior something wrong, and so that needs to be also assessed. If you have the both, result of that is that people perform. Does it answer the question?
ありがとうございます。ケイパビリティと振る舞いを具体的にどういう観点から評価するとか、その手法についてもう少し詳しい説明がもしあれば伺いたいと思ってます。
So what the company is doing, at least one of them, a big, less huge adoption, they have a collaboration workshop. In that collaboration workshop, they first set all kinds of capabilities that the company benefits from, that they wish to see in the people. Then they put it on a scale, and in such a way that it's possible to assess. So that when they take one individual, they can assess where in the scale this person would fit.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Well, I can add something if you want.
ぜひお願いします。
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking that this can be connected to this morning organizational design, this star model, the rewards element. Yeah. So if you change your strategy focusing on something else, and then it will automatically mean that you need to check whether all those elements are in line. In some organization, what happens is to gather relevant people to have some kind of redesign for your performance appraisal system, and one, it could be that this morning some of you already mentioned that it could be like team-based. This could be one thing, but then you need to design further if this team-based, what kind of criteria do you use. Here we don't look for kind of perfect solution, but some solutions that can be more consistent with your strategy. I can share one example, but this is not like the answer, but just for your reference. There's one organization, they redesigned their team-based performance appraisal system by having 3 parts. Yeah, actually I need to clarify. So three parts, like for each team member within their team, their performance appraisal consists of like three parts. The first part is team related, meaning that all the members in their team share the same result. That could take like, let's say 6% of that result. So that 6% of the result comes from the team's result. They have like 30% of result coming from peer appraisal, something like that. Part of that is based on what Viktor said, based on certain behaviors. Yeah. Then there's another like 10 or 20% that's for their competency improvement. Then the team result part actually mainly from the external feedback, meaning that some business result, some customer issues, those kind of things. It's not an internal view. They take an external view. Yeah. So this is not a perfect solution, but I would argue that it's actually more consistent than their previous performance appraisal system. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
ありがとうございます。
参考事例でいいのでお聞きしたいんですけど、やっぱりいろんな組織にこういう新しい取り組みですね、例えばレスなんですけど、導入しようとしたときになかなか理解を得られないマネジメント層とかいるんじゃないかなと思うんですけど、そこをどうやって突破してきたかっていうのをちょっと教えていただきたいんですけど。
First, the questions are really good, and also I could probably talk for 1 hour just about that question. But let me summarize 1 hour in a few minutes, on 2 minutes or something. Again, very short story. I was in India in a conference, and I've seen so many conferences, other agile conferences. And a typical topic there is from the people basically complaining how management is not understanding agile. Yeah, and now I have a habit to ask them, if the situation is comfortable, to ask them, do you understand what your management actually themselves want? Quite often, they actually usually don't. Of the answers they give point to they probably don't understand what management really wants. So the reason why I explained that part is because I don't try to convince of management to do anything actually. Instead, I try to understand what they actually want to achieve. And our job as a change agents, I assume most of you here are some form of a change agent, or at least internally you want to actually bring change. The job of us is essentially to fulfill the goal that management wants to achieve. So the conversation essentially flows from let me explain in a very short steps. The first step is that I try to understand really the situation. Yeah, and then a second step essentially is I would ask deeper questions about the struggle or the problems that they might have. So one typical thing they say, my projects are not on time and it costs too much, let's say. So this is the problem they perceive, but it's usually not a systemic problem they actually have. So I would then continue asking questions about the organizational elements that contribute to this situation they have. At some point we agree or I start to understand this is the actual real problem, and they also realize this is the actual real problem. And then whatever I suggest to do starts with a sentence, given that you have the problem you have, my suggestion is to do this. Then they could say, well, I don't like your suggestion, or I think it's too much, or anything like that. Then I can explain, I don't see then other way how you, without changing your organization, for example, you can actually solve really your problem that you have in a systemic way. And then in a very humble way explain, I don't see it other way. Maybe somebody else can see other way. I'm just not capable of seeing it. Maybe I can get you somebody else to help you also.
Just one thing, it's actually more general pattern than it's whether you try to convince management or team or whomever. I found that it usually works better by selling problems than selling solutions.
And we'll talk much more about this at the last day of the conference.
はい、ありがとうございました。はい、チェンジエージェントとしてマネジメントを理解して動くことから始めるっていうことを、理解できたのでありがとうございました。
今日一日ありがとうございました。ちょっと今の質問とも似てるかもしれないんですけども、逆にそのメンバーの方がその自分の専門性に強い自信とかがあって、例えばエンジニアとして例えばバックエンドエンジニアとして採用された時に、もう自分はバックエンドの技術すごくこだわりたいんだみたいな時に、いや全体価値を考えてフロントとかインフラとかもうデザインとかにもどんどんやっていこうってなった時に、それは自分はそういうキャリアを歩みたくないみたいに思う人も中にはいるかもしれないと思ってまして、そういう時にどういうふうにそういう人たちも一緒にこう巻き込んで全体最適化していくべきかというところをもし参考になるケースとかありましたら教えていただきたいです。
That's hard. Yeah, I have been in this kind of situation for quite often actually. So one thing is that in LeSS we talk about this job safety. Says job safety, but there's no role safety. It's you want to also make sure that what's not affected So I also would like to again connect it back to the organizational design framework, this STAR model. This is one element related to the people practice. This is actually part of your legacy because that if starting from the change, then you can actually align the expectation from the beginning. For example, if you want to hire new developers, then you can already align the expectation while hiring. But this is a legacy because he or she might join early than this change. So that's a challenging part. We can do lots of things to help this person. Like for example, as I mentioned, this is a role safety. Then there's also like helping him to see the different kind of possibilities. But I have to say that we can do to some extent to the point that some people will still don't like this idea of multi-learning, then we have let it go. It's very difficult to just let it kind of accept it in the same context because otherwise it will ruin all the changes. But you can still within your scope, maybe in the same organization, there are other kind of individual work that can be taken by this person. But I think that it's a bad idea to just accept it, then put him in the same team, but having a different expectation.
There's a few additions actually. The first, what Louis just mentioned, it's really important to set a proper stage, organizational context. So concretely, this means that the management, when they set the direction of organization, need to be completely consistent. Second, a particular aspect in that messaging is quite important, which is that the people are not anymore developers or coders. They are product developers solving customer problem. So if this message is given properly, it tends to inspire people to go beyond of their small scope of concern. Next, there's very interesting reasons why people say that. So they say, I want to only do backend developer, and that's my thing. But the reason they say that could be sometimes a protection mechanism for themselves. For example, they get dragged in lots of inefficient meetings. For example, they get judged whether they do the other thing good enough, or they think they're going to be judged. And the last point is, what does it mean to be a good backend developer? So for the developer among us here, when you write a code without understanding the bigger context, typically in a backend, the code tends to be of a quite bad quality because it's too technical names of the classes, methods, etc. So being involved in a bigger picture actually makes you a better backend developer.
ありがとうございます。I understand. Thank you.
ありがとうございました。お話の中でマルチスペシャリストを育てるっていうお話があったと思うんですけど、スペシャリスト、プロフェッショナル、エキスパート、いろんな英語が日本語だと専門家っていう一括りに表現されることが多くて、あえてそのスペシャリストって選んでいる、そういったニュアンスだったりだとか、具体的にどこまで成熟した方であればスペシャリストになるのかっていうところを、もし何か具体例とかもあれば含めて教えていただきたいです。
Okay, so let me try to give an answer, but it depends on the translation. So when teaching less or we are in less adoption, I actually avoid even using the word specialist. The term specialist assumes a box. But we humans actually, we just know stuff, many different stuff. Some stuff could be completely unrelated even, but we especially know a lot stuff which is similar to each other. So when you say we need to do something else, then you simply start working on that something else, and in process you learn it. But when we talk about a specialism, then we typically associate that with a kind of like a black-white level. So you are a specialist or not. In reality, it's much simpler. There's simply work and requires certain knowledge that you typically gain by doing it or reading a book or all kinds of ways, and you're able to do it. If not, you try anyway. So in summary, if you get rid of those specialism and this discussion of specialism, discussion becomes simpler.
I found that this, as Viktor also mentioned, this discussion about whether this is a kind of end state that we would like to have is actually kind of distracting, because that I sometimes use a different way to explain this, which is just to simply don't constrain your future don't let your past constrain your future. Yeah, the past is simply what you have worked on. The future is what you are going to work on.
Question answered?
ありがとうございます。一旦ニュアンスはちょっと感じ取るものがあったものの、やっぱり実践した人と実践しないで知識だけで聞いただけだと解像度ってやっぱり違うのかなというところがあって、そういった意味でも踏まえて実践するっていうのが本当に大事なんだなって改めてお話聞いて思いました。ありがとうございます。
Maybe I add one more thing because you need to really pay attention to that is why you prioritize things. You don't take into account your current skills. Let the external factors, which is value, drive the prioritization. Then the rest will be taken care of.
ありがとうございます。
Very good questions. More.
いろんな方のお話とかを聞いたりとか、皆さんのお話を聞いて思ったのが、逆に失敗したことあるのかなっていうのをすごく聞きたいなと思っていて、背景として私も組織改善を行おうとした時に一度失敗をしておりまして、その時は結局 PO さんとのリソースとの関係性で失敗をしたっていうところがあったんですけど、やっぱその時に小さく試さなきゃいけない、私たちもスクラムが導入できるかっていうところがあったので、損切りを早くしなくちゃいけないっていうような思いがあったので、今回は一旦諦めましょうっていう私たちは判断をしたんですけれども、かなりプロフェッショナルなお二人はどういう時に逆に諦めたりとか一旦保有しようっていう考えをこれまでしたことがあるのかなって気になるので、ぜひ教えてください。レス導入、スクラム導入をするときにちょっと一旦やめとこう、ここは他のところにちょっと導入を考えようっていうのは何かあれば。
Yeah, I think that, well, of course, I guess that you try to find some common ground. And firstly, I would say that probably you don't take the goal. The goal is not really adopt Scrum or less, because that starting with that will give you more room to play with. The goal instead would be like you wanna see some improvement, or you wanna this is something that you pursue. Then we can try to find some common ground, like referring back to what I said before. Try to look for the problems to start there the problem first. So for me, the kind of failure, that's probably enough, and would be there's nothing that we can improve in this context. I mean that you probably see lots of problems, but somehow you cannot solve the problem because everybody feels it's happy with the current status quo and nothing to be changed. And probably that's the thing I feel maybe I need to move on. But otherwise, as long as there's any problems that I can sell, I find some ally, and then it's worth pursuing still.
To add to that is, I think what you also mean is that if the organization is not ready to do like a full-blown less adoption, you do what you can achieve. That's basically it. So having said that, when typically really goes wrong and you need to kind of stop as soon as possible is when management say they want to have a less adoption, but they actually don't understand what it is. A often made mistake is to let less adoption grow bottom up. That doesn't work. It can succeed, but it's a very rare. In addition, this is a really big one, but there are also some other factors, such as, for example, changing HR policies. So trying to do that without actually providing a recognition from HR point of view for, let's say, backend developers will just simply lead to backend developers not willing to learn. Another one is distance from the customer. So if you don't have reasonable access to the customer, or at least really close to the customer, better not do it. And last one, that's particularly that I have made a mistake number of times coming to Asia and living in Asia for 13 years, not understanding the local cultural aspects, specifically in the companies, but influenced heavily by the country culture. For example, when it comes to decision making, unless we say we leave decision making as much as possible up to the team, which I know works really well in Japan, but some other Asian cultures is just not an option, or is really hard to change because management feel because they are in a certain position they are more intelligent, even they literally say that, than the teams. So when something like that is said, I should have stopped the less adoption, but I still tried and it didn't work.
ちょっと困るのが、私はビジネス側と開発側のどっちの側面も見ていて、どっちの気持ちも分かるんですけど、ビジネス側は別にレスとかアジャイルとかスクラムとかは まあ別にそんなに必要性は感じてないけど、システム側はすごくやりたいっていう時の板挟み状態の時、私は全然まだまだペイペイで平社員なんですけど、どっちの上長の気持ちも分かる。じゃあどう動けば私はいいんだろうっていう。
So one of the things is to expose the conflict of the view and explain the consequences of that, meaning that if less adoption continues without proper support from business, what will happen? So obviously, I don't know your context at all, but what typically happens in that situation is that the stakeholders are competing against each other, so it becomes very hard or impossible to have a single backlog which functions properly. So one suggestion, which probably not very practical, somebody at a higher level, even higher level, needs to sit and explain and get to understand what they want to achieve and whether it aligns.
Another thing is that because we are exploring possible ways forward, essentially, right? Another thing you probably can try, because the business is not interested in LeSS per se, then probably we can set LeSS aside for a moment and just step back and starting from some of their concerns or challenges, and also challenges from the RIM side, then try to find some common ground, whether those things can be solved by less practices or not. It's secondary, but work on those things first.
わかりました。ありがとうございます。
はい、それではこれにて Q&A セッションを終了したいと思います。ルイさん、ビクターさん、どうもありがとうございました。